Hello, First Church. So we on the church staff have been talking a little bit about worship services in the fall, what they're going to look like, how they're going to be constrained by coronavirus, what that's going to mean in terms of the number of people that we can have in a single room at once, and that kind of thing. And important in these discussions, which have been going on, of course, in collaboration with the board and with the COVID task force and so forth. Important in these discussions has been how do we create a communal experience of the sacred in a way that is familiar and important to those of us who value the worship services, while also constraining the numbers so that we're all safe. Worship might end up looking a little bit unfamiliar, feeling a bit unfamiliar this fall. I was reminded of a poem by Seamus Heaney that I love very much, and I recently reread it in this context, and the poem seemed quite different to me, but I want to share it with you and then just come back to our worship plans for the fall, okay? So this is from Seeing Things, a sequence of poems by Seamus Heaney. The annals say, when the monks of Clonmacnoise were all at prayers inside the oratory, a ship appeared above them in the air. The anchor dragged along behind so deep it hooked itself into the altar rails, and then, as the big hull rocked to a standstill, a crewman shinned and grappled down the rope and struggled to release it. But in vain. This man can't bear our life here and will drown, the abbot said, unless we help him. So they did. The freed ship sailed, and the man climbed back out of the marvelous as he had known it. And I love that idea, that image of the ship floating through the oratory, the monks at prayer looking up and see this marvelous floating ship, the anchor caught in the rail, and the man shimmying down the rope and trying to release it. And this beautiful idea at the end, that he climbed back out of the marvelous as he had known it. And part of what's magical about the poem, of course, is that the experience of the marvelous, which is told in this wonderful little magical fable in the poem, but the experience of the marvelous is something fundamental to worship. It's something fundamental to our experience of the sacred. And the poem gives that a kind of a marvelous, fantastic little twist. But how can we as a church, as a congregation, in the unfamiliar, somewhat novel environment that we're going to be in the fall, how can we create a sense of the marvelous, of the sacred, as a community, possibly in small groups, possibly in different rooms in the church, depending on what the COVID task force says we're allowed to do? How can we be the crewman who shimmies down the rope and sees what is familiar in a way that is unfamiliar and fantastical and marvelous? This is something to think through, and this is something that the staff are thinking through, and we'd like to think through with you as well. Because the sacred has to be something familiar, it has to be something that continues our habitual needs for ritual, for reassurance, for community with the people that we know and recognize and love. But at the same time, the marvelous is something new and foreign and strange and magical and leads us to new places and to visions of new things. So let's think about this together and create something beautiful and sacred together, all right? Thank you, First Church.